Hello, and welcome back to Iconic Seasons. I'm your host, Aaron Meyer, and today we're deep diving into the 1979 Salt Lake City Final Four, a tournament that was about more than just the games, about storylines, personalities, and the dawn of a new era in college basketball. The 1979 Final Four wasn't held in a megadome as it would be years later. No, it was just this modest-sized special event center, the University of Utah, with a seating capacity of just 15,000 people. As the college basketball world descended upon Salt Lake City, there was a palpable sense in the mountain air that something special, something very big was about to happen, and it did. The narrative as we've gone along, of course, is just richer than the games themselves. We've had all these stories tracing Larry Bird from French Lick, Indiana to Salt Lake City in the championship game, for Irvin Johnson from his humble beginnings in Lansing all the way to the stage that he ultimately was born to be on. The looming showdown between Larry Bird's Indiana State Sycamore and Magic Johnson's Michigan State Spartans was the main course. But there's also other compelling storylines that I don't want to miss out telling you about. For example, there was the venerable Ray Meyer. The 65-year-old coach of DePaul finally made it to the Final Four after 37 years at the school. He'd already been elected to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, and many wondered if he would ever make the game's grandest stage. The Blue Demons had a strong team, including a talented freshman named Mark Aguirre, who had led all freshman scorers that season. Then you had the University of Pennsylvania Quakers, an 8th seed from the Ivy League, who had pulled off a series of shockers to reach the Final Four. They had upset teams like Iona, led by Jeff Runlin, and North Carolina on what was known as the Black Sunday of Tobacco Road. They weren't supposed to be there, but they were tough, they were quick, and their coach, Bob Weiner, even said, "We have a heck of a lot of talent," despite almost every story about the team referring to them as intelligent. Now, let's talk about the stars of the show. Larry Bird was already a legend in his own right at this point, and if you've been following us this season, you can't disagree with that point. After wrapping up their final practice, Indiana State was given a police escort to the airport with thousands of fans there to see them off. And they were cracking jokes on the intercom of the charter jet, including a few bawdy jokes, which fit with the personality of this team. As we've talked about from the beginning, there was just a homespun, a hometown feel to this team. And Bird, of course, was at the center of this, even though his mom was on the plane. He was the type of player whose one name was not enough anymore. He had so many nicknames. He was the Hick from French Lick, the Hulk. And after winning the regional final, Bird revealed he had aggravated a thumb injury after a fan had grabbed it, causing him to punch the fan. "I think I convinced him to let me go," Bird said. It was clear that the team was heading for the big time. Bird said he felt so good in the semifinal against DePaul that he was begging for the ball. And despite a season-high 11 turnovers, he finished the game with 35 points on 16 for 19 shooting and had 16 rebounds. We're going to break down the Final Four games in great detail with one of our co-hosts. This game was absolutely incredible to watch, and Bird's shooting throughout the game seemed almost unbelievable as you're watching it. It just felt like he could not miss. And I'm sure being on the court at that time, it must have been heartbreaking for those players. I've got a podcast recommendation, Daily Sports History. A fellow podcaster reached out, and I think he's doing some great work on it. He's going to do an episode coming up here in January on the NCAA tournament expanding to 64 teams, and that'll be included in one of the upcoming episodes of Iconic Seasons. So I'll be interested to hear his take on this, and it's just a fun podcast to check out. I'm going to roll his promo here, and if you're interested, you should go over, subscribe to it, or download an episode and see what you think.
Did you know on this day in sports history, something iconic, unique, and crazy happened? And that's what the show, Daily Sports History, is here to bring you. Listen daily to relive iconic moments. Find out about unique situations and learn how sports got from its beginning to where it is now, covering all types of sports history so you can amaze everyone with your sporting knowledge to show off your genius. So listen now at dailysportshistory.com or wherever you're listening right now.
Meanwhile, Magic Johnson's Michigan State team was dealing with a different kind of pressure. Coach Judd Heathcote was so concerned about outside influences that he closed his team's practices. Michigan State took an extra day getting to Salt Lake to get acclimated to the altitude and get away from the craziness at home. One of the players, Greg Kelser, noted that the coaches were trying to get us to stay grounded, to get us centered. Heathcote even took them to a high-end ski resort, making them feel like they were the main event. But Heathcote wanted his team focused on the job at hand, and he tried to limit their exposure to the press. He felt there were too many columnists in the area that thought they were going to win the national title. The build-up to the semifinals was intense. Indiana State was staying at the same hotel as the Michigan State band, and the band members were playing their instruments late into the night, robbing the Sycamore players of sleep. There were press conferences and meetings that kept the players busy. The press ran the doggone tournament, Bill Hodges, the Indiana State coach, said. That sounds pretty modern to me. Kind of amazing that at the time that wasn't the focus, that the game was bigger than the story of the game. Very much flipped now, where you have this entire weeks and narratives and podcasts like this that lead up to the game, that tell the story of the players leading up to it. Not so then. They told you where to go and when to go there. The Indiana State players also found the Salt Lake City to be somewhat colorless, with the difficulties in getting alcoholic drinks. That was something that the team enjoyed and was part of their bonding. The semifinals themselves were a mixed bag. Michigan State absolutely destroyed Penn, winning 101-67. The Spartans jumped out to an early lead, and Magic Johnson was on fire, scoring 29 points with 10 assists and 10 rebounds. Triple-double, just like he would throughout his NBA career. He even did some fancy ball handling, leaving the commentators marveling at his talent at his height. Penn was simply overwhelmed by Michigan State's size and quickness. Penn's Tony Price had talked trash before the game, saying he would force Kelser to shoot from the outside, and that he'd seen all of Magic Johnson's moves a million times. But the Spartans proved him wrong. I can't wait to break down this game as well. Absolutely incredible. This Michigan State team, looking back at the semifinal, you could see the issues that Indiana State would have as well. A lot of the same things arose, and it turned out that this was just Michigan State's tournament in the end. But it's beautiful to also take the perspective that things aren't a given going into those games, and you can see why. The story around a game can help it feel more exciting than it ends up being in the end. And as part of the enjoyment of sports, the storytelling, the myth building on the way to games, the journey of the teams to the Final Four, even if they don't get to the promised land, there's only one team that wins in the end. The other semifinal, of course, again, was Indiana State versus DePaul. And it was a completely different story than the Michigan State. It was back and forth, tied 15 times in the first half. DePaul hung with the undefeated Sycamores, even taking a late lead. But Bird again was unstoppable. And in the end, Indiana State squeaked out a 76-74 victory. It was a game that had everyone on the edge of their seats. Even Michigan State's players who had already finished their game were watching. Kelser said he got instant respect for every guy on the team. When talking about Bird, it was an intense game that tested the Sycamores, who had won all their games by double digits. So again, a game this close, sometimes you think, is a team ready for it? They were. So, the stage was set. The matchup everyone had been waiting for was finally going to happen. Larry Bird's Indiana State versus Magic Johnson's Michigan State. It was a dream come true for the fans and the media, the showdown of two titans. But before the final game, there were so many other unique storylines that captured the But before the final game, there were so many other unique storylines that captured the nation's imagination that weekend in Salt Lake. Join us next time when we delve into the championship game of the 1979 NCAA tournament, where history was made. Thanks again for listening to Iconic Seasons. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Iconic Seasons 1979. We'll be back with more stories from the 1979 season. If you like this week's episode, leave us a rating or review. Until next time, keep your below and your eyes up.